Alright everyone, we start off today talking about Mark Esper's new memoir. Of course, he was defense secretary under Trump. And he made a very, very funny claim, which was that Trump at one point asked him if it was possible to launch missiles into Mexico to destroy cartel labs, run by the various cartel gangs throughout mainly the Yucatan, actually, and then say that it wasn't the United States. Well, maybe the wisdom of attempting such a thing is not the same as maybe the wisdom of finding a better method by which you could actually succeed in hiding the fact that you conducted the strike. The idea, I think, is actually a pretty good one. Esper's claim is probably false anyway. This smacks of like the guerrilla channel sort of thing, whereby any claim about Trump, if it causes a person to become uncomfy or is considered to be palpably insane, a lot of people just assume that it's true. This would actually not, though, be an insane suggestion if you intend to go after cartel crime. And of course, as a non-drug warrior, I don't care if cartels peddle drugs. The problem is that they use the drug money then to buy and ship slaves. There's a lot of human trafficking in Mexico and Central America, number one. Number two, assassinations, political hit jobs, or just assassinating random people and hanging them off of overpasses to make a statement to other gangs. There's a huge amount of violence associated with the drug cartels. It wouldn't be a problem if we ended the drug war, but so far there aren't many people suggesting both doing that and going after the cartels. The Mexican government, of course, being relatively weak as far as that goes. They're incapable of fighting the cartels. They don't have the manpower. There are some people in Mexico that work with the cartels either out of fear or they're like, hey, the government's not going to help us. So what else should we do? And then you've got the porous U.S. southern border that incentivizes cartel activity. Maybe not under Trump so much, because people realized there was going to be an attempt to deport them. But under Biden, it's basically, we're back to catch and release in most cases, simply because there aren't enough resources to process everyone. The southern border right now in the United States is fundamentally undefended. So while I don't believe Esper's claim, I think it's unlikely that Trump believed that it would be possible to fire a bunch of Stinger missiles or whatever, or Patriot missiles rather, and then say that it wasn't the United States doing it. The idea of some sort of joint covert operation against cartels, I don't think many people would actually oppose that. Some people responded to me chuckling about this just this morning. They're like, oh, they're going to have to bomb Mexican villages. Styx is becoming a neocon, a warmonger. Cartels aren't a state entity. They don't operate with the explicit endorsement of the Mexican government. They're pretty much just tolerated as a nuisance because there's no other choice. Typically, these labs are not in villages. Typically, they're out in the jungle somewhere because they still attempt to avoid detection, including from fellow gangs. Other gangs might decide to put out a hit on some other gang's drug labs, hence continuing the cycling violence down there. I don't think the Mexican government, by the way, would have a problem with it. Probably, if Trump were to have talked to the Mexican president, he'd get the green light. The Mexican president at the time would just have to say, but I don't know anything about this. Publicly, I'm going to condemn it, say it violates territorial integrity, blah, 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 but don't worry about that. It's just that if I were to endorse such a move, then the cartels would probably fucking abduct my family. And that's really the long and short of it. Now, before I continue, keep in mind if you're watching this video on YouTube, there will be a pinned comment down below with links to other video hosting sites that I use. Keep in mind I make exclusive content pretty much every day on those platforms that does not go on YouTube. Again, reminder, Dailymotion's no longer part of that portfolio of sites because of their very stupid, in my opinion, decision to block people from using the site if they have ad blocking software on. That's going to hurt long term. You get a bump in revenue very temporarily, and then more people leave the site, including myself, one of the largest creators on the site actually, by the number of subscribers, and well, it'll all go to shit. Here's the thing. Pretty much everyone that Trump didn't famously get along with, who left his administration, at this point has penned a memoir or a bunch of blog posts or something complaining about their former boss. on the one hand, you'd say, well, this is too many people making too many claims about Trump saying weird shit for us to ignore. It's possible that some of them are true. The vast bulk of them, though, they really sound like the anonymous source told the New York Times that Donald Trump had Russian hookers peeing on the Obama's bed. An anonymous source says, yes, the tape is real, the one that Tom Arnold refused to post after declaring that he had a copy physically of this. Well, I got death threats, so I decided not to post it, even though people are still going to be pissed at me for saying that I have it. And so you've had these claims over and over and over. It started in the primaries. It started before Donald Trump was even the mainline candidate for the GOP. Over and over again. Anonymous source says he cheated on his taxes. Anonymous source says that he banged his daughter. Anonymous source says Trump tried to start World War III. Anonymous source says that he wanted, and this was a funny one because this was actually a satire at the expense of people who believe such things. Trump wanted a TV tuned 24/7 to the Gorilla Channel and insisted that such a thing existed, so the Secret Service had to take random tapes of gorillas beating on each other and loop them together so that Trump thought it was a TV station. This claim was taken seriously and reported on at the time, you'll remember, by some of the legacy media. They didn't even fact check it. It then turned out that it was basically a joke at the legacy media's hyperbolic expense, and it was made by people who liked Trump and wanted to expose the fact that they weren't trying to fact check anything. It happened, there's got to be 100 examples of this happening during and after the Trump administration. From the Russiagate hoax to the Pissgate hoax to now the insurrection hoax and much more. Esper's claims fit in with the vast lexicon of Trump derangement syndrome style material. Now, why would Esper do this? It'll sell. His memoir will probably sell tens, hundreds of thousands of copies because people who want the complete definitive edition of Trump derangement literature will gobble it up and they will carefully read through it and they'll report it without fact-checking or saying, maybe the fact that one dude is claiming in a private conversation that he has no actual tapes or notes on, claiming that Trump said or did something deranged or went off handle, he became incoherent and was throwing things around, he threatened to have me kill, he said weird shit. Again, I just can't believe that those claims are real when I see how many times the legacy media especially has been hoodwinked by similar hyperbolic claims from anonymous sources that later turned out to have been either absolutely false, we can prove that, or they came from a source that never intended them to be serious and was basically having a lark at their expense because of the hyperbole. If, however, Trump had done this, the only problem with his question is that he thought that there was the possibility of using specifically missiles, which are tracked and trackable, and then saying that it wasn't the U.S. that did it. You'd have to bring the missile out into the jungle somewhere and fire it. You would know it was a U.S.-sourced missile, potentially, unless you imported some foreign ones. I don't know about the policies regarding doing so. I would also like to say this. Right now, the United States has just in the last 24 hours been confirmed as having given the intel responsible for Ukrainian militia striking the Moskva and crippling that to the point where it sank being towed to port. We're finding out that a number of hits on Russian generals were the result of U.S. intel. We're finding that the U.S. involvement in Ukraine arguably is more about intel than about machinery. You got half of Europe's already pumping machinery and guns and ammo and non-lethal aid and everything else, armor and vehicles into Ukraine. We're finding that the U.S., led, supposedly by Joe Biden, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, is also doing what we did with regards to like when Saddam and the Iranians were fighting. We gave Saddam intel and let him fire chemical shells at Iranian forces. The Pentagon, it was revealed a few years ago, gave explicit intel to the Iraqi forces that we then stabbed in the back after the war was done in order to conduct those operations with banned weapons that the United States was a signee on never using. But we didn't have a problem because, of course, Iranians were dying. If we're looking at the situation currently in Russia, how could a person potentially make the argument that striking non-state targets without the consent necessarily of the sovereign state, but a state that is the strong trade partner obviously isn't going to suddenly turn its back on the U.S., number one trade partner of the United States, where Mexico's number one trade partner, there's a fairly close tie, and also Trump actually got along with their government, was fairly friendly with their then president. Under such a circumstance, if you struck a handful of cartel drug labs just to make the point to screw off and stay away while you're defending the border, it'd be really apples to oranges to compare that to what's going on now. And some of the people that'll decry this and say it was evidence of Trump's madness have Ukrainian flags on their Twitter profiles right now. You can notice a little bit of hypocrisy sometimes. That's about all. Peace out.